to episode number 28 of Winning the Division. I am your co-host, Ryan Smith. Alongside me, former tight end Benjamin Troupe of the Tennessee Titans, Oakland Raiders, and Tampa Bay Buccaneers, also of the University of Florida Gators back in the day as well. Tonight, our guest for episode number 28 to talk draft coming up in April is NFL Draft Analyst. He's also the host of the Sick Podcast with Draft Vogel. You can find him on Twitter as the NFL Draft Analyst at Draft Vogel. He is Mr. John Vogel. John, how's it going, my man?
Things are going great, guys. Thanks for having me tonight. Ben, I got to say, I've got a lot of respect for a guy that plays tight end. One of my really good friends, he always said nobody grows up wanting to play tight end. So anybody that does it, that's just automatic respect, especially at the highest level.
I appreciate that, John. I mean, because as a person that when I got real tall, real fast in high school, and when they said go down there with the tight ends, I'm like, what? You know, I mean, I remember this. Every Gronk, Travis Kelce, George Kittle might be changing that. Guys might be eating a couple more carbs. You know, them tweener guys, the 240, 245 guys that can't really get open on the outside. Learn how to put your hand in the ground. But I do appreciate the love, man, no doubt.
Well, gentlemen, we are here to talk on Winning the Division. This is our, I believe, third straight week having an NFL Draft Analyst, John. So you are kind of right in our wheelhouse here for these months heading up to the draft. Last guest that we will be having on prior to the Combine starting in Indianapolis this week. Thursday is when the first official day of workouts does kick off. So, John, before we kind of go into the Combine, the draft, and some things around the league, just for the listeners maybe not familiar with kind of what you do with the Sick Podcast Network and as a draft analyst and just kind of what you do.
Yeah, so it's been, I think this is my 8th full cycle that I've been covering the draft, pretty much exclusively. I do that. You mentioned the Sick Podcast Network with Draft Vogel. We do that, and then the next couple of months we'll be on all the different Sick Podcasts platforms. They've got a bunch of teams that team-centric podcasts that they do. It's a great organization, and I'm very happy to be a part of it. I've told the story before. You can go check it out, but I wasn't huge on joining because when they first pitched it to me 2 years ago, because I had a lot of projects going on at the same time, but they won me over. They were persistent, and they've been a great group of people to work with. I have my draft guide that I put out every year. It's one of the most in-depth draft guides you're going to find with team breakdowns, prospect, scouting reports, pretty complete breakdowns of each school, and just pretty nerdy is a good way to put it. It's a nerdy breakdown of the draft, and I want to show all the work and kind of how the matchmaking process works from a draft analyst standpoint of the types of players that teams like, how that pairs into the current roster, and show all that stuff. All my work is in one place and it's available. You can get to the link on my X, and I do a lot of these podcasts and shows with people like y'all.
Yeah, absolutely, John. Well, we are thrilled to have you. Let's just get right into it. Before we get into the draft specifically, one of the names that is kind of out there is Matthew Stafford. Now, we know his preference around the league, at least from what I've heard, is he wants to stay with the Rams. He'll even take a pay cut to stay with them. He just wants to be compensated fairly. So what is your thoughts on Matthew Stafford? We've heard the Giants, we've heard some other teams, but his preference is to stay in LA. And if he does get moved, is it a team like the Giants? Is it somebody else? And how can that impact this upcoming draft?
Yeah, I think you're going to see a lot of teams that need a quarterback definitely make calls about it. It's not a very strong quarterback class at all from an evaluating standpoint, because there's a lot that's unknown. You look at, Shedeur Sanders, and he's a little bit of a smaller guy, maybe not as strong of an arm as some of those quarterback prospects we see out there. And then Cam Ward, you got to learn to live with the mistakes. He's going to make a mistake. He can make a brilliant play, possibly to make up for it. You just don't want him to make the last mistake. And then when you start getting down into even, the lower guy, the next tier guys, the Jackson Darts, the Kyle McCords, Tyler Shuck is a guy that's been brought up a lot here recently out of Louisville. They all have their own concerns with Ole Miss's offense not always translating well. In the case of Jackson Dart, in the case of Kyle McCord, he had that run at Ohio State that wasn't particularly great. and then had the big interception game where most of the NFL scouts were this year. I think he threw 6 in the same game. 3 went for touchdowns on the other side. And then with Shuck, he's 25, 26 years old. So there's all these in an extensive medical history. So there's all these kind of concerns with all the top quarterbacks. So these veteran guys, I think, are becoming more valuable this year than they were last year. Sam Darnold going on the market is going to mean something. Justin Fields is going to mean something on the market. And so when you have some of these guys, Aaron Rodgers is on the trade market. He's going to end up somewhere. Stafford, his name is naturally going to be brought up. I guess my question is, if you're the Rams, who do you turn to replace him with? And is it going to be something that's cost effective? The obvious answer is Sam Darnold. So if they want to get younger, I think he gets moved. But it's hard to kind of put your finger on that and say, they need to move him because they're going to get an offer they can't refuse from the Giants, I think. So I don't have a particular take on it other than it will be the Giants if it's anybody. They seem to be the most desperate in this market, which is surprising with the Jets situation. But I think that he probably ultimately stays with the Rams.
Yeah, that's what I'm feeling too. Ben, do you have anything on that before I go to my next quarterback?
I mean, I gotta ask. I mean, you've been, I see you with your champion, Super Bowl championship. Obviously, we talked about you being an Eagles fan. Everybody wants to talk about, the Staffords of the world. Everybody wants to talk about the Joe Burrows of the world. How much can a Jalen Hurts affect the quarterback market just from a visual standpoint? He is highly efficient. He's nobody's darling. He's a second team All-Pro. He's already had a second team All-Pro. I don't know if how many quarterbacks either in this draft or in the league now benefit from a Jalen Hurts, who I'm not going to be talked about as elite quarterbacks, but I beat arguably the best quarterback, or outplayed him twice in 2 Super Bowls. How do you see Jalen Hurts reshifting the mindset of the quarterback market? Because we want the big numbers, but it's all about winning and winning Super Bowls, for which he's already done already.
Yeah, I think that he does shape the market a little bit because, first off, I need to clear this up because I was a huge Jalen guy. He's my darling. So there are darlings out there, okay? 5 years ago when he was coming out in the draft, people asked me if I thought he would win a Super Bowl. I said, yeah, I think it's absolutely going to happen. You've seen the leadership that this guy has and the way that he can change a culture and a team and an organization. And here we are. 5 years later, he finally did it. The thing too is it's culture means so much. You know this better than anybody, Ben. Culture means so much in an organization. So when you have a leader like Jalen, a guy that demands accountability, a guy that he holds the standard, essentially. He walked in there until Saquon showed up. He was squatting more than anybody on the team, as the team quarterback. So I think that the culture means more. But if you can bring that to an organization and have the athletic ability, we're all going to go that way, at the quarterback position at some point. That's going to be the standard across the league, that you have athletic ability to be able to extend plays and even add into the run game. It's definitely going to shape the market. I think that really opens the door for Justin Fields to get another opportunity, especially with the improvement that he did show in Pittsburgh, as controversial as that might be.
Yeah. You mentioned Sam Darnold. You mentioned Aaron Rodgers. Those are the other 2 names I was going to bring up already. So personally, I think if Stafford did get moved, which I do not think is going to happen, but if it did, I could see Sean McVay going after Aaron Rodgers for a year, just to kind of he's from the West Coast. He lives in California in the offseason. That could be an easy transition for the Rams to go to someone like Rodgers for a year and then get a quarterback in 2026. However, I don't think that's obviously going to happen. But if Stafford would get moved, that'd be my guess. But Sam Darnold, I could see him going to the Raiders. That's a sexy pick for me. Pete Carroll, getting him with Brock Bowers and some of those weapons that they're kind of developing in Vegas. What do you see on Sam Darnold and Aaron Rodgers?
Well, I think it's interesting that you bring up the local connections with Aaron Rodgers. That's not something I had really considered too much. I do think that Sam Darnold's probably the favorite to the Rams. And you think about if they were to move on from Stafford in that situation, because, he just worked in Minnesota with Kevin O'Connell this past year. Kevin O'Connell is a coaching product, you could say, quote unquote. He went through the Belichick system, and then he is a quarterback in the league, and then he goes to the Rams and comes out of the Rams as the offensive coordinator to take that job. So he worked directly with Sean McVay. To me, that looks like Sam Darnold would be the perfect handover to Sean McVay in this case, because the Vikings have their quarterback of the future. They drafted him last year for that reason. He should be healthy this year. And I think that, they like what they have in JJ McCarthy. With Darnold, if you think that you're close to being in a Super Bowl run, like I think the Rams think they're very close. You want to make sure that you have a capable quarterback that's there and somebody that you can kind of build around for a couple of years. I don't think that anybody's looking at Aaron Rodgers right now as a 1-year rental that's going to help you win games unless it's an absolute, dire situation. Like I think Pittsburgh makes a lot more sense for Aaron Rodgers. But when you look at Darnold's not even 30 yet. He's just had the best season of his career in that type of an offense. It's a very similar offense to what the Rams run. If I'm the Rams and I want to get younger at the quarterback position and I want to have somebody that I could potentially put a good playoff run together with that just showed that he could do it last year, it would be Sam Darnold. So I think that another name to watch, you mentioned the Raiders, I think a name to watch there is Russell Wilson. And again, the Pete Carroll connection, very, very obvious connection there. But I think that would be like a last hurrah as they kind of maybe they take somebody in the draft, second round, back into the first if they were to move back into it. But they would try to bring in Russ to run it for a year to let that player get into the system.
All these older quarterbacks still having so much leverage. And I'm not putting Sam Darnold in the old quarterback, but I mean Matthew Stafford, Aaron Rodgers, Russell Wilson, all these former Super Bowl winners trying to find a place. And obviously, listen, no one's gonna question Aaron Rodgers' arm talent. I think it's everything else. Like you mentioned, culture in the locker room. Sam Darnold. I mean, when people ask what is the best Sam Darnold you're gonna see, I think you just saw it. But and a lot of Justin Jeffersons and Jordan Addison's walking around as well. But I think the wild card is always going to be Matthew Stafford. Matthew Stafford proved he can play football with Detroit. Like, dude, I can play. It's just I think the coach. I didn't have a Coach Campbell Dan Campbell. I believe if a Matthew Stafford land in the right spot, I think he's going to be very, very dangerous no matter what division is in. Because I think the thing about Sam Darnold, he said, look, I appreciate Detroit doing for me what they were unwilling to do for a Barry Sanders, unwilling to do for a Megatron. I'm not – so I think because of a Megatron, because of a Barry Sanders, look, man, we don't want to be known as a team that, don't let our best players out because they want to win. But Aaron Rodgers to me is scary only because, and I mean this humbly, I don't know if Aaron Rodgers wants to play football or he wants to be famous. And I could be far off, but I can only go off these snapshots that I see. If he comes in with blonde hair because he's been to the Cayman Islands, I don't know if I can trust him. But when you do things like Netflix specials, it's like you care a lot about image. I care a lot about reputation. I don't get that from Stafford. I think Russell Wilson has learned his lesson from his days in Denver, having 2 parking spots and just all these crazy things. I think Matthew Stafford got the best shot because I think he's the most relatable. I don't think Russell Wilson, if he can go from getting away from branding and just play. And Aaron Rodgers, like I say, who's not gonna pick up an Aaron Rodgers phone call if his agent say Aaron Rodgers wants to play here? You got to at least give him but it's gonna be interesting to see. But I think if Justin Fields gets another opportunity, look out because I think this guy, played really, really well for the first 4 weeks and got benched for who's gonna question Mike Tomlin. But I think all 4 of those guys. I think Justin Fields got a good shot. Sam Darnold. I don't want to. Is it him or is it the system he was in because he had his best year? But it's going to be exciting to see because I do agree this quarterback draft, this 2025, you're gonna definitely reach for a guy because the quarterbacks you have to. But I think that's what make this quarterback class intriguing, and we'll see what happens. Definitely see what happens.
The other quarterback that I totally forgot to mention in that was Kirk Cousins. Ben, you know him on the Falcons right now.
Listen, you guys want him? Anybody that'll? We really
Cleveland's gaining steam. I'm hearing Cleveland.
We gave him $90 million last year. And I say we like it's my money, but I'm just saying.
I'm hearing Cleveland, which, with Deshaun Watson probably out for the year. And, even if they drafted a Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders, they're going to need someone in for this year because I don't think either of those guys want to play. They want to play them right away. John, would Kirk Cousins work in Cleveland?
I think he'd be a better fit than what they've had. There's with Deshaun, there's the whole off-field stuff that we've all talked extensively about for years and don't need to continue to go into the details with.
No.
But so, you got the off-field stuff. You've got, it looks like he's really looked unwilling to play when he's been there, and he's actually played in the game. He's looked very, in what's a good word to put? I'm trying to think of a nice way of saying it. He looks like he doesn't want to be there. He doesn't want to be on the field.
About as disinterested as a player that I've ever seen. And John, let's face it, it is Cleveland. It is Cleveland, and I get it. But Cleveland gave you a contract that we've never seen from a player that hadn't played football in almost 2 years, that didn't even the money didn't even hit until after his second year. So, I don't know, but Cleveland has a huge problem. They got two problems. They got one at the quarterback position, and they got Myles Garrett, for which that is who everybody's going to be taking calls from. And I'm just saying, if Myles Garrett ends up in Philly, I'm not watching football in 2025.
See, I've been hearing that too.
See, the Commanders of the Lions are two teams to watch as well. I think for Myles Garrett. Yeah. Well, let's get into the draft. Enough quarterback talk. Let's just go ahead and get into it now. John, so from your eyes, what is the what is the best position in this year's draft? Deepest, best, most talented, whatever you want to call it. And is there a draft? Because we all know this draft is not the best. We don't have to discuss that. Yeah, everyone has said the same thing coming on our podcast. It's not the best draft in the world. It's got some decent players at the top, a couple of blue chippers, if you will, and outside of that, it's not the best draft. But is there two position groups that are, would you say, a talented and kind of pretty? Who's the loaded position, and then what's the position that's not very good? You're not going to find a lot of guys in this position group.
I think there's three position groups that stand out to me. Sure. The running back group is incredible this year. It's one of the better running back groups that I've seen, especially at the top. And then the depth is there as well. We're talking about Ashton Genty out of Boise State, Omarion Hampton out of North Carolina. These are guys that are really top-tier running backs. Hampton reminds me a lot of DeMarco Murray. And Genty is kind of this wild horse type, player that we really haven't seen at that build. He's almost 220 pounds. He's under 5'9". At least that's what they had him measured in at the spring. And so when you start to talk about that body composition, you don't see people run as fast as Genty is at that size. So he's kind of a wild card. It reminds me of his running style of Frank Gore a lot. And then you keep going down the list and it just keeps getting better. You got the Iowa running back Johnson. You've got, Dylan Sampson out of Tennessee. There's some receiving talent there. A lot of the guys that were down at the Senior Bowl were a lot of fun to watch this year as well, on tape and down there. It's a very, very deep class. The tight end group is awesome. From top to bottom, there's more tight ends that I can remember seeing in a single class ready to go that could have instant impact this year. From Tyler Warren, Colston Loveland at the top. And then you just keep going through the list. There's a couple guys that are going to be really good that have medical concerns, like Elijah Arroyo out of Miami. That guy could freaking play. He's a ridiculous athlete. He just hasn't been able to stay healthy outside of this last year. And then is, reportedly dealing with a knee injury he suffered at the Senior Bowl. But that's another very deep group that, you spend some time on them and you're sitting there going, there are a lot of guys here that are really good. And the last group I'm going to point out is the defensive tackle group. Specifically, really the 3-tech guys, the guys that are going to fit in a 4-3. They're going to line up. They can line up between the center and the guard and the tackle, 1 and 3 techs. Those guys, there's so many of them. And, we talk about Mason Graham at the top. I really like Shamar Stewart. I know people kind of consider him an edge. He could play anywhere on the defensive line. Walter Nolan out of Ole Miss. That's another guy that's really good. So there's a ton of talent at those three position groups. And those are the ones that are really the most exciting, in my opinion. You look at the weak side, I think that the tackle and really offensive line in general is pretty weak this year, which kind of sucks. You got these, you got Abdul Carter coming off the edge, adding these types of pass rushers on the interior, and you don't really have the people to kind of make up for it. That are going to be young to grow with them. So that position group's kind of weak. And then I think that there's the linebacker class is okay, but it's not great. There's a couple guys that'll be really good, but there's not a lot of meat in that position group.
Ben, I'll let you start. Is there any kind of players you want to start with? Kind of get your insight, your thoughts, and I'll kind of I'll keep going when you're done.
Well, John, I saw where, you got a lot of grief when you were talking about, a guy like Mason Graham might fall to the 49ers because he might not test well. Go a little, because talk about that, because people hear the combine and people hear, does it make a player? Does it break a player? When you are a really, really outstanding player, like Mason Graham, they're looking for every reason to make you fall. When you talked about him not testing well, is it going to, I don't really get into the Wonderlic because I don't want to put my Wonderlic test out there for nobody's business. But
I don't think they do the Wonderlic anymore. I think it's the other stuff now.
But what is it about Mason Graham that can make him potentially fall to a 49ers, potentially right out there outside the top 10, because people got him going in the top 5. How you think he looks at the combine?
Oh, so my point, I think that was one of those things that people kind of blew up at and didn't understand what I was saying, because the number, when you put a number on a position, say, oh, he's my defensive tackle 3, people think, oh, he's going outside the first round. What's wrong with you? No. This class is loaded. He's still a top 15 prospect. The one thing that I think about him, though, is watching him on tape, you don't see a lot of the explosiveness. So he's probably going to test about average. And when I talk about defensive tackle average, I think that's something that's not necessarily understood either. You take the average defensive tackle runs a 5'10" 40, jumps a 29.5-inch vertical, 8'9" broad, 27 bench press reps. That's the average defensive tackle in the NFL. Okay. So when I'm saying he's going to test about average, that's what I'm saying is he's in that group. That doesn't necessarily knock him as a player. It just means that there's not a lot of athletic ability that's outstanding there. Right? I think he's going to kill the bench. He's got shorter arms. That's usually a really good indicator for the bench press. I think he probably comes up with somewhere between 30 and 35 reps. But the combine is really used as a measure to say, okay, based on the previous evidence that we have over the last 25 years, these types of players, here's how they kind of stack up against each other. So this type of skill set, here's how they normally test, blah, 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 blah. You can break yourself, and that's if you come in and you test poorly. And I mean, like, below average, well below average. And if you're a top guy and you're testing below average and that's not expected, that's where it breaks you. Everybody's got their projections where you're expected to kind of do this and run in this range and jump in this range. And it's usually a wide margin. It might be in a 40-yard dash. It might be 0.2, 0.3 seconds, which is a wide margin. In a vertical, it might be 2 or 3 inches. In a bench, it might be 5 to 10 reps. But, you have an expectation. And so when the player doesn't meet that, that's when we start talking about teams are going to look into that a little bit farther and see is it on tape? Is it something that I've misidentified? That's essentially what the combine's going to do. So it's not really a make or break, but it can break you and it can make you into something that you're not. We saw that with John Ross in 2012. Runs a 4.2, 240 or whatever it was, and goes 8th overall, and he didn't have 8th overall tape. So there are teams that will take that chance if you test outstandingly, but it really shouldn't make or break you. So with Graham, that's a guy that you look at. So you look at historical precedent, which is you've got a guy that's he's about an average athlete. He's going to probably come in with shorter arms. And when I say shorter, close to 32 inches, a lot of NFL teams have a cutoff at the defensive tackle position, which is 32 inches. Like looking at my list right now, I have a list in my draft guide that shows all the defensive tackle standards based on what the rosters looked like in the training camp last year. for what is allowed and what's a hard cutoff in certain measurements and testing groups. There's a lot of red right around 32, 30, in some cases 33 inches. So there's not a lot of teams that are willing to take that chance on you because length, very important in the trenches, to create separation when you have that strength. He's going to have the strength. It's really just going to be about, is he more than a gap shooter? He didn't show a lot of ability to two gap on tape. So that concerns me as an analyst, because now I have to project him into a defense. And if he's just a gap shooter as an average athlete with shorter arms, what are you going to do with him? What kind of role is he going to play? Is he a 30 snap game guy? Is he a 40 snap game guy? That's where I fall into that projection with him, where I'm like, I like a guy like Walter Nolan better, who reminds me a lot of the Detroit tackle Sue a few years ago, who was an absolute beast and vicious with his hands and had the length and size. Nolan is like him, but into compact size. He's 6'3", 290. So that was what I was trying to say when everybody kind of jumped on me about it. Was just that, hey, historical precedent is not kind to Mason Graham. He has some stuff that he's going to have to overcome. And I like Walter Nolan a little bit better.
What is before I get into my prospects, and I heard this today, which is why I bring this scenario up. I want to whenever year it was with Baker Mayfield and Saquon Barkley, their draft class. After the combine, it was all Saquon Barkley. He was tested really well. We all knew he was a kind of a phenom out of Penn State, but the combine just kind of excelled everything else that we kind of knew about Saquon Barkley. And then nobody saw Baker Mayfield go number 1 overall, but that's exactly what happened. Baker Mayfield went number 1 to the Cleveland Browns. Is there a guy that you, by your measurement, whether it's a quarterback, whether it's not Abdul Carter or Travis Hunter, is there someone who, whether it could test really well at the combine or someone we're just not talking about, that could just shoot up and go number 1 overall this year simply because of a team at the top who may trade with a team like Tennessee? Or is it, or how does that happen, I guess is what I'm trying to ask. Someone like a Baker Mayfield going number 1 overall versus some of the other guys kind of in the past who have been more obvious number 1s, and that that's what happened.
You talking about like when Javon Walker went number 1 overall because he killed
Correct.
It, and people was like, obviously he's been a good player, been a really, really good player for Jacksonville. I didn't see him going number 1, but when he's big as he is, fast he is, strong as he is, he got the call. So
right,
yeah, I think how that happens is there's 32 different teams that have 32 different draft boards and 32 different sets of grades on a player, right? And so we sit here and talk about consensus, and this guy, he's a first round pick, he's a second round pick, and there's a general consensus that's generally formed by the media, right? That's not always the case in the NFL. I think that you'll see that a lot of guys have first round grades with one team. They might have 5th round grades on another. And it's just all based on fit and scheme. Trayvon Walker, when you were asking the question, that was exactly who I was thinking, was Jacksonville. I met Trent Baalke, the general manager at the time at the combine that year when they had the number 1 overall pick. And that was one of the things when we were talking was he was talking about, size and measurables mean a whole lot more when projecting a player and how he's going to play in the NFL. Which Baalke, give or take, as his resume shows, he's had some hits, he's had some misses, but he's always been based on a prototype size. He likes size, speed, and athletic type freaks. So I think that's how that happens. Now, when we look at Tennessee, I think that the thing with Tennessee right now is they're not in a position to take a quarterback. They might have the first overall pick right now. I don't think they want to end up with the first overall pick. I think that they're trying to move it. They probably want to move it to someone who wants to jump, the Giants potentially, or even the Browns if they were to surprise everyone and take a quarterback. I think that that's what the Titans are kind of trying to sell with the first overall pick is, hey, you want to get your guy, come get him, give us an offer. Because they don't want to be picking there. So I think what you're probably going to see is a quarterback. Micah Parsons and Travis Hunter are 2 guys that we've talked about going at the top potentially if it's not a quarterback. it's really hard to see anybody else kind of popping into that group, especially with how the Titans are going to be drafting. If you look at the history of the Chiefs, Mike Borgazzi, and he was the assistant, the new general manager for the Titans, Mike Borgazzi. He's the assistant general manager for the Chiefs for the last 4 or 5 years. You look at the way that they draft, and they're typically a little bit more set in stone with the type of player that they want and the size measurables and testing that they like. I don't think if the Titans are picking there, it's going to surprise you. I think it's Abdul Carter. But I think also that if they move the pick, it's going to be one of those two quarterbacks.
Let me, since you're wearing your Eagles shirt, let me start with the Georgia players in this draft. But with the Philadelphia Eagles, I mean, you got Jordan Davis, you got Jalen Carter, you got Nolan Smith, Kobe Dean, Keely Ringo. I could go on. Let me give you the 3 Bulldogs that everyone was talking about so far and kind of your evaluation on them. Jalen Walker, Mikael Williams, and Malachi Starks. Particularly for my Panthers, Jalen Walker has been mentioned a lot at pick number 8. Mm-hmm. Can you convince me? I'm not 100% sold. I'll be quite honest. The vulnerability is good on winning the division. We like to talk it out.
You ain't sold on a Georgia D lineman? Wow.
North Carolina native, so it'd be a good story. He's from Salisbury, so it'd be a good story. But sell me on Jalen Walker. I think of the 3, I actually might prefer Malachi Starks. I know safety is kind of one of those positions. Like at 8, it's like that might be a little high, but I like Malachi Starks' game despite his down year this year.
I think what you see in this draft, I'm going to start with this because I'm going to get there, is a lot of movement. I don't think a lot of these teams are, especially in the top 10, want to be picking there. And it's because at the very top end of this draft, these are not the typical top end players once you get outside of 4 and 5. That you really, really usually take up there. So it's going to cause some weird picks. Picks like position groups we don't normally see up there. Maybe tight end, safety is another one. Or it's going to see somebody trading down and somebody moving back up into a spot. So Starks would be a guy potentially I'd like to, if I felt like I could get him at 13, I could move down. Someone want to move up to 8, so 13, 14, 15. I would move back and get him. I love Starks. I think that he's probably the best safety in this class. I know that he had the down year. He was dealing with a couple of injuries. He played through it. That tells me that he's tough and he wants to play football. And I think he's got the instincts and he's got range. And those are 2 really important things that you need at the safety position. He's a pretty good ball hawk as well. Maybe not as strong a tackler, but good. I can't sell you on Jalen Walker because I'm really not sure if he's a rush edge or if he's a linebacker, like, an inside linebacker. So now you got a position group, what position is he going to play? Where are we going to put him? Sometimes those guys pan out, but most of the time they don't. So when you kind of have this position identity and you're in that tweener zone, I got him at 6'2", 245. We'll see what he actually is at the combine. That's a weird place to be. And so I know that he's a good tackler and he's punishing and he collapses pretty well when he's pursuing off the boundary. He's got some real good strength, but if you're going to play linebacker, you got to be able to cover. And that's something that's kind of a question mark with him. Is he going to be a downhill thumper or can he cover? With Michael Williams, I think that you've got a raw young pass rusher here that if you want to take a year or 2 to develop and let him really get adjusted to the league and really start to work on his hand usage and some different things like that, let him learn how to use his length a little bit better. He's a guy that he could be a really very solid contributing player on your defensive line, whether he's a stand-up or you put his hand in the dirt. He might have to learn how to put his hand in the dirt. He's mostly a stand-up guy. But he's insanely quick, and he's got some really decent lateral explosion. I really thought he showed really good bend working around the outside. So, getting under that tackle and really turning that corner at times. So, I like Starks better than the 3 that you named personally because I'm a big fan of Malachi Starks. I like Michael Williams, and I'm not so sure about Jalen Walker.
John, I gotta talk about this because I'm always talking to Smitty about whatever industry you in. You know, you got the good and the bad in it, whether it's podcasting, whether it's coaching. You are in the scouting industry. I read what you said. It's a competitive industry, and it's easy for people to become carried away with protecting their jobs. But let's not hurt the sport. Let's all grow and get smarter together. Talk about you going from a young person in the sport to, hey, man, you said I'm willing to lower the rope, because we get it. Everything, not to make it sexist at all, but men are naturally competitive. I don't care what it is. But we are, but now it's all about the draft. It's all about the combine. You know, this is what you do. You know, during the season, I don't even know how much you can enjoy watching the games because you got to evaluate the players. But talk about being a guy in this industry that understands that, listen, while I might have been burned in this industry, I'm willing to lend a hand, because I understand we grow together. No one wants to be these. Yes, I would love to be the quote draft mogul. Everybody comes to me. But it's better when we got colleagues in this sport. Talk about being a guy who has some rough spots, but not let the rough spots dictate how you are now.
Yeah, so I think one of the best things that ever happened to me was I was very fortunate, very blessed, however you want to look at it, to meet Mark Gorsak, who was a longtime scout for the Pittsburgh Steelers, and he's famous for it. You're going to see him when you're watching the combine this year. Running the 40-yard dash. And he's a very good friend of mine. He's become a mentor to me over the last several years. That's one of the things that he kind of lives by. Now, not to get too off the rails or anything, but there was a scout that was legendary in NFL scouting communities, and his name was C.O. Bricado. And he worked a long time with the Houston Oilers and was with them when they became the Tennessee Titans. C.O. was everybody knew him in the industry, and he was one of the guys that he'd take his shirt off his back for anybody. And that was his philosophy, was scouting is an art, and it's something that has to be passed down. It has to be, mentored and taught. And if we don't do it and help everybody learn, then the sport suffers. So CO was Mark's mentor, and he passed the reign basically on to Mark, who everybody calls him Gores, if you know him really well. Gores continues to pass that on to many other people in the industry. And so to me, yes, you're right. We're naturally competitive creatures. We want to get into it. We want to be better than everybody, but there's a certain gentleman aspect to being competitive, which is you don't hurt anybody around you while you're being competitive. You make yourself better. Right. And the way that we get better is by communicating. Hey, like Ben, you might pick up on something on a tight end that I've never even considered looking for, because you played the position and the position because you've been on the field doing it. I haven't. You look at me, I'm a 5'6", 185 dude who would get killed if I went out there and tried to block you, So that's the thing is but if we're too competitive to the point that we want to put everybody around us down to hoist ourselves up, I think what ends up happening is that comes back to you. You never know when you're going to meet somebody. You never know when they're going to come back into your life, and you want to treat everybody with that same respect and dignity. It's because the little guy's going to be big one day. It's going to happen as long as they stick to it. So I like to be around people that are passionate. They pass on information to me that they might not even realize they're passing on. It's just something that maybe I never thought of, maybe not something that I never noticed about a player. And that's valuable to me as input, because by keeping an open mind, I can see the whole picture a little bit better and try to be a better analyst in the long run.
Yeah,
I always like to make sure, because I think sometimes, we do these podcasts. When it comes to football, it's all one big family, from the coach to the players to the trainers to the equipment man to nutritionists because what happens with scouts, as you mentioned, and I think that's a great point. As a former player, I'm not a talent evaluator, but what happens is, can I see something? Yes, but I'm not a scout. So what happens is, if I'm saying, John, look, when you're watching these tight ends, every time they block, see if they make a contact with their second foot on the ground. You're like, what? Matter of fact, when you watch anybody block, the best blockers, they make a contact with their second, because if somebody catch them with their foot up off the ground, I can't give full force. It's little things, because if I'm at a combine or if I'm at, the Senior Bowl, I'm there just to spectate. I'm not being how I said, because here's why. As a former player, people will think what I say is golden. I said, no. It's all in the eyes of the beholder. Like you just mentioned. What everybody else didn't see what Jalen Hurts you're gonna do. I saw him at Alabama. He went to Oklahoma to show I am not gun shy. Ask CD Lamb if I'm gun shy, right? And think about it. CD Lamb is in my same division. The only reason why CD Lamb is gonna say that Dak is better than me because he plays with Dak. But if you ask him who you want to play with, well, I play with this guy in college, So I just want to say, yeah, man. I mean, I think one hand washes the other when you start talking about these industries, because even though we know a bunch of people, it's extremely small. I'm talking about very small. So when we start, not saying that's what we would do, but to those people out there who try to create enemies, man, you're not going to make it in this industry because you might not know the person you're talking about, but somebody knows of that person and say, hey, man, it ain't that serious. Like, we are draft analysts. We are lovers of the game. I mean, me and Smitty, we root for the Carolina Panthers and the freaking Falcons. We better love the game. We better love it. We ain't gonna be around long. So I just want to make sure I give you a flowers and saying, because no one wants to be known as the person undermining people. You want to be a person saying, look, man, it is competitive. My work will speak for me or it won't. What I do will speak for me or it won't. That way when we see each other at these events, because we're going to show up to the same place, the Combine, the Senior Bowl, pro days. I don't want to be avoiding you. I go, you see him. Yeah, we're here to evaluate, shake hands, go get a bite to eat. Hey, man, I see you. If I see you around, man, let me know if we can connect. Because like you say, the more eyes you got out there, and sometimes it's okay to say, I like the way John evaluates. Like, I like the way. That's what it really, it's not nothing more than I like the way he breaks it down. Because I remember, I said, well, they used to tell us this when I played. They said, not saying you are this, John. I mean this respectfully. They said the nerds are about to take over. What do you mean? They are about because it's becoming more numbers driven. Who catches the ball the best between third and sixth? It's becoming like that. So to the point where guys are coming into the league already with a specialty. Hey, coach, I want to play slot receiver. I don't want to deal with that stuff on the outside. They coming in wanting to be Puka, wanting to be Cooper Cup from year one. It used to be, hey man, I can't get open on the outside no more, so I got to come on the inside. No, I'm coming in day one being Wes Welker. And when you say things like that, I think with the people like myself, which I'm an old has-been now, man, but I do make my way around these corridors a little bit and let people know, look, if he's good, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, and that's any industry. And how you know he good is that people start doing crazy stuff, saying stuff that has nothing to do with the game, nothing to do with evaluating. I know we're getting out the rails a little bit, but I think it's always good because we got guests coming on. I ex-stalk you. I'm finna go all through there. If something catch my eye, I'm say, got to make sure I ask him that, because 270 characters or whatever is not enough time to say, hey man, let me just get this out, because John knows I'm speaking for more than me when I'm saying this. And hey, man, I appreciate you being candid about it, because, everybody got agents now, publicists now, and the publicists say, don't ask him about that. Like, don't ask him about what? The fact that people, I'm just saying. So, I think those types of things are good, because this industry is way too small, man. I mean, it just is. And as long as we are enjoying, like when you talked about work ethic, got to be passionate about it. Listen, I respect y'all draft analysts. I don't know how y'all do it. Y'all know the guy that goes, the University of Miami, in California. Y'all know him. He got a kid. But that's why I respect it, because you guys become the voice of the players who everybody knows Abdul Carter. Everybody knows the top 2 or 3 guys. You guys saying there's a guy who's ranked 30. I wouldn't be surprised if he goes 7th round. The Brock Purdy's of the world. So we need you guys, man. You guys are watching the draft. Y'all, and I got to ask you, do you have a draft board? Because everybody, do you have your own draft board to say, I got these guys? Do you do the mock drafts, which I like mock drafts, but people need to stop letting that be the holy grail. A mock draft is just what I think would happen, because by the time it comes, Daniel Jeremiah, you're going to have 7 mock drafts by the time the draft comes. But does John Vogel have a mock draft? Do you do that as well?
Yeah, so I always wait. See, I put off my mock draft, my first one. I usually do one right after the Super Bowl. I do one about right after the combine, and then I do one right before the draft, and that's it. I don't need to do any more than that. That takes. I feel like a mock draft for what I want to be a specialty of is almost a waste of my time, and the reason for it is because you got to sit down, and when you make a mock draft, it's not like oh, I'm just going to take the best 32 players and throw them on with each team. No, you got to sit there and think about scheme fit, interest, maybe check a couple sources and be like, hey, what does this team think about this guy? And it takes so much time away from actually sitting down and looking at some of those guys you're talking about that might be a 6th, 7th round pick. I don't want to do it at the end of the day. I hate doing mock drafts. But that is the bread and butter of the draft industry, right? And from a media standpoint, is the mock draft. So I haven't done one yet this year. I'll probably have one after the combine if I can stomach sitting down to do it. I'll definitely have one right before the draft, and that one will probably get submitted to be graded because there's a whole thing about it's part of your reputation essentially as a draft analyst is how accurate you are with your first round mock. So you always submit that and get it graded with everybody else just to say that you have it and here's my accuracy, blah, blah, blah. But for the most part, no, I would rather be sitting there watching the tape, evaluating the dude, getting an idea of what that 6th, 7th round player is, because that's where you really start to find those diamonds in the rough. Kobe Turner is a guy that I really liked a couple years ago that killed it. We got a guy this year. He might go day 2 now after what he did the Senior Bowl with Jackson Slater out of Sacramento State. He's a guard. He was one of those guys that I loved watching him on tape before the season started. I thought this guy, he's a dude. He's aggressive. He's off the line of scrimmage. And it's interesting that you mentioned the second foot when they're blocking. I thought that was interesting. You mentioned that because there was this particular block at the Senior Bowl where Slater was pulling from one B gap to the other. And he pulls all the way around. He gets his hips flipped down, got his second foot down, bang, seals the hole. And he did it like that. It was crazy. And I was sitting up there because I got a little relationship with Jackson, from looking at him before the season started and talking to him going, hey, I really like your game, dude. And so, hey, I was watching you. I told him at the media, I was watching you up there. You pulled that pull off. You got your hips flipped all the way around. Your feet in the ground. You hit that dude. And I was like, that's my boy. Big brother tears up here, like just he did it. He made it. He's there. And that's the joy of scouting, is you see a guy, you pound the table for him. And then he goes out there and he shows something that maybe not anybody else really thought he could do. And you're just sitting there watching going, man, I tried to tell y'all. I saw it. I saw it back when he was a junior in college. That's the joy of scouting. But no, I don't like mock drafts as much. I hate doing them. I would much rather sit down and get deeper into the class and continue. Yes, I have a big board. I put my final grades up there. I sort them. Typically, I have a projection, so I sort them by projection. Where usually like a 30 to 60 round pick range of where they're probably going to go, and then sort them. If they all have the same type of round grade, then I'll sort them by how I like them from that point.
Let me just kind of fly through some players. I'll start with a couple of position groups, and then I'll go on the offense. Then I'll go to the defense, and we'll just kind of fly through some of the players. And obviously, unlike last time, I didn't want to go through all the position groups with you, and I'll leave you some time and kind of at the end to kind of touch on some of the guys that maybe we didn't get to, kind of before you got out the door. We'll start with the offense. Is there a quarterback well, first off, who's your quarterback number 1 between is it Cam Ward, is it Shedeur, is it somebody else? And after those 2, is there a quarterback 3 that you're keeping your eye on? Someone like a Kyle McCord maybe, or a Jackson Dart of Ole Miss? And then we'll start with the quarterback. We'll start there.
Well, it's very close between Shedeur and Cam. I like Shedeur just a little bit more, and it's because he's a little bit safer of a pick, I think. You know what you're getting with him. You know that he's going to come. He's run a pro-style offense. You know that floor, the worst that he can be is not that low. At the very least, he's probably going to be a backup. So that's a guy that's going to stick around the league probably for 10 years. Cam, it's a little bit different because you're not so sure that someone's going to want to live with the mistakes. I mean, we've seen what happened to Jameis Winston. Love Jameis as a person, but he's got no shame. He'll keep slinging that ball over and over again, and people get fed up with all the turnovers that causes. Now, my quarterback 3 is probably a little bit different than most people, and a lot of the evaluating that I do is based on tape. It's before the season's over, and I kind of like that traditional approach where I'm not going to pay as much attention to, the off-season drama and all that stuff that unfolds with these guys. I want to really evaluate them based off of what I saw on tape more so. And I really like Jalen Milroe still. And I know that that's kind of a controversial take in the draft industry, but you start to look at some of these guys that have made it, as those late first round dudes, those second round dudes over the last 5-6 years. And the one thing that they kind of have in common is elite athletic ability. Obviously the book's still out on Anthony Richardson. We'll see how he turns out. He's had some injuries and stuff that he's had to deal with. But I think that, Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, those are a couple other of those dudes that were in that late first round window that were very good athletes. With Milroe, I think you're getting the athletic ability that Lamar has, Lamar Jackson. He's that type of dude. He's built a little bit better, more like a running back. And he's got a cannon for an arm. So you've got a couple really good traits to work with there. I think if you build an offense around him that supports that playing style, a lot like what Todd Monken did with Lamar Jackson over the last couple of years, that type of offense, I think you could really put some wins together with Jalen Milroe as your quarterback. And that's a guy that I personally like a little bit more than a Kyle McCord, than a Jackson Dart, than a Tyler Shuck.
Switching over to the receivers, you have the guys at the top, Ted McMillan, Luther Burden, Emeka Ibuka. And you can talk about those guys. Who do you have as your top guy? But going down to the draft, some of these guys are really intriguing. The guy at the Senior Bowl, or maybe it was the Shrine Bowl, I can't remember which one it was, the TCU receiver, Williams.
Jack Beck.
Yeah.
Savion Williams.
Yep.
Both of them are really good. Yep.
Jalen Noel from Iowa State. You've got, Tez Johnson from Oregon. There's just so many guys in this receivers class that I think you can find in later rounds. And I think that's personally just watching a lot of these guys on tape. I come away, Trey Harris as a guy that Ben likes over at Ole Miss. So Isaiah Bond, Matthew Golden from Texas. So many receivers that you can talk about for days with this class.
Yeah, I like Matthew Golden. Outside of those top 3 that you named, and I do have those 3 that you started with as my top 3. I like T-Mac better than all of them. But Matthew Golden is that next guy that I'm like, this is a dude, he kind of does a little bit of everything. He's explosive, and he's a playmaker. And so I think he's a guy that probably starts as a low-end 2. He could step in and be a high-end 3 right away. But a guy that's going to continue to develop. And in the right offense, you're going to see him be a number 1 somewhere. Very similar, I think, to the way that Stephon Diggs kind of plays. Now, maybe not as the lead of a route runner, but very similar skill set.
Before I switch to the defense side of the ball, I heard this today, so I wanted to get your take on it. A guy like a Ted McMillan, he is very controversial. Some guys have Luther Burden as their number 1. Some guys have Ted. Now, I might be misquoting here, but some people say, well, he looks good against New Mexico, but when he goes up against some of these bigger schools that Arizona played, he kind of struggled. He can catch it great, but the route running and some of the other stuff outside of just catching the ball, you don't have, the receivers just more than catching the ball. You got to do a lot more than that. So is there any kind of merit to something like that where, you might see a player who does really well against a, lower tier school and then kind of struggle against the stiffer competition, but yet people still have them ranked pretty high as a prospect?
I think that's sort of it's a misinterpretation of who T-Mac is. And I think that a lot of those people who think that way, because I've seen it too. You're absolutely right. That is something that has been said a lot. I think that people who say that about T-Mac, didn't watch the games, they looked at the box score. When you watch him come off the line of scrimmage, he's got a very good release. He's pretty darn explosive, and he's sudden. He's not a guy that's going to take the top off a defense. He's going to have to win with physicality deep, a lot like Mike Evans kind of did here in the last few years as his athletic ability has started to diminish. But he's a guy that he's sudden enough where he's going to create that separation in those underneath and intermediate routes just because of that. Now, Arizona's quarterback situation, yeah, these two guys, Noah Fafita and T-Mac, played together in high school. This ain't high school anymore, guys. This is the University of Arizona, and the Big 12 got a good bit more competitive, in 2024. And there was a lot of times where you see on tape, T-Mac wins off the line of scrimmage. He's wide open, and Noah is 5'9" and cannot see him. So I think that when you actually watch the tape, you find that T-Mac is a very, very crafty route runner for his size. He's a 6'4", 6'5" dude that moves like he's 6 foot, like Mike Evans, a lot like him. In fact, I think he reminds me a lot of Mike. That's why I keep bringing him up. But he's absolutely a playmaker. The thing is, if I wanted T-Mac to be my number 2 wide receiver and play a role like Deebo Samuel, that's where you want Luther Burden. That's who Luther Burden is Deebo Samuel all over again. So again, Deebo, very good player, right? He's had a pretty darn good career. He's been very productive in a lot of different roles in that offense, but he's not their number 1 receiver. If you want to open up Deebo, you got to have, an Ayuk, a Brandon Ayuk going up over the top, opening up that seam and taking that safety with him so that you get your one-on-one matchup for Deebo. He'll win those all day. So T-Mac is a guy who's going to dictate coverage at the next level, I think, whereas Luther is going to be more of a complimentary guy, a very high-end complimentary guy.
Go ahead, Ben.
No, I was going to say, you talked about the tight end position, and obviously you talked about Tyler Warren, you talked about Coastal Loveland, a guy that I think is probably the most intriguing, and it is a lot of intriguing guys. Harold Fanning Jr., he's not your typical big tight end. He's a U. Mm-hmm. But in the world of tight ends, he's coming into the league at the right time. Talk about Harold Fanning, because now Tyler Warren, I've never seen a tight end get utilized like that in college. They let Tyler do. Tyler, what you want to do this week? You want to throw the ball? You want to run it? Whatever you want to do, they let him do it. And he was highly effective at it. Harold Fanning put up video game type numbers. He's not the biggest guy. Talk about where you see him, because I see him in like a Sean McVay or Kyle Shanahan type offense, so where you can move him. But talk about his intrigue and how he's coming into the league at a good time, to where they're not going to try to make him something that he's not.
Yeah, that's again, fit's going to be critical, like you said, right? I think that there's a lot of people that kind of have him in that second, third round window. I don't think he's going to go that high. I think you're going to see him more as a day 3 person. We're going to see all the draft analysts on TV talking about why isn't Fanning off the board going into Saturday. But it's going to be that because he's not your traditional tight end. Now, I thought that his movement ability at the top of his routes isn't great. And as long as you can keep him moving in a straight line, you saw those little arrow routes going to across the formation into the flat. He was phenomenal at those. But when you want him to sit, he can sit at the top of his routes too. But you want him to move, you want him to do different things like that. He doesn't change direction very well. He's very top heavy in his build. But yeah, I think you got it as an H-back, like a U, like you said. That's definitely the type of player that he can fit. And the role that he can fit, that role doesn't typically get drafted very high. So he's a guy that potentially falls in the draft, but outplays his draft position.
Some guys on the defensive side of the ball, I'll just kind of hit on the just all positions before I let you kind of, for anything, guys that maybe we didn't cover, guys that you kind of want to talk about, and I'll kind of present that to you. Jack Sawyer from Ohio State, he made the big play. Obviously, in the semifinals, JT Tuimoloau, I cannot pronounce his name. The 2 Ohio State guys. Xavier Watts, safety from Notre Dame, on the backside. And then the guy from Boston College, Donovan Iuiosu. I really like his game. I know he's from Boston College, and Bill O'Brien did a great job with him this year, though. I'm really intrigued with his game. So those are some of the guys that I'm intrigued by on the defense side of the ball. Are there other guys that stand out to you on those position groups, but especially those four?
Well, yeah, I think Watts showed he could be a ball hawk this year. I think he came down with 7 interceptions or something like that, which is absolutely incredible. I know they played a couple extra games, but still very productive, ball hawk, good instincts off the back end. Maybe not a very strong tackler compared to some other guys, but capable. I think I'm trying to remember all the names that you just threw at me. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. Jackson Sawyer, JT
Okay.
Tuviolial.
Yeah. So the Ohio State guys, I think if you're in the AFC East, you very, very want to consider JTT very, very, very seriously because of the way that he handled Olufoshanu, those 2 games that they played. Knowing that you're going up against the Jets twice a year, you might want to go ahead and stack him in the rotation somewhere. But he's a guy that he's definitely an athlete. Maybe both of those guys are a little bit stiff. JT's a little bit better. Has a little bit more bend to him. But Sawyer is going to be a motor guy who's going to have to develop, and really get into his mechanics and his technique, especially in his hand fighting, because. And it does work, and that's why I'm bringing this up. TJ Watt, when he entered the league, was really a motor and hustle guy, a guy that he needed a lot of work, a lot of refining around the edges to really understand how he was going to attack a tackle and really get into his pass rush sets. But he developed, right? He had a really good coaching staff. He went to the perfect place to develop under Mike Tomlin. And he developed, and then the Steeler way was still kind of a thing back then, so they were able to teach him that, and he really developed into that. So Jack Sawyer kind of falls in that category of, he's a motor guy. He's not going to stop until the whistle, but he's got a lot of raw, ability that he kind of needs to refine. Those are a couple guys that are interesting, and then the Boston College guy that you brought up, I still don't have his name down, I'm afraid.
I don't either.
But we'll call him Donovan E. He's very interesting, and it's because he came in a little bit bigger than we thought he was going to at the Senior Bowl. I think most measurements had him closer to 6 foot. He came in over 6'2". And he's got some crazy length. 34.5-inch arms he measured in at the Senior Bowl with. So at 6'2", that's insane. That's like monkey arms. He's a guy that he can use that speed. He's a good athlete to really win with his speed rush. And so I think that's a rotation guy, a guy that, you put into certain situations, and then until he kind of builds his frame out a little bit better and comes up with a little bit more power, he'll be a really solid piece in a rotation somewhere.
My last one, Ben, for me. If you have other ones, I'll let you kind of go ahead. Coming up on Combine this week, besides the Mason Grahams of the world and guys like Travis Hunter, and we didn't even talk about Travis Hunter. My goodness, had an hour go by, we didn't even mention Travis Hunter. So you can talk about him if you want. But is there any guys not named Mason Graham or guys at the top that you think are going to test really well at the Combine this week, and guys that we should kind of be on the lookout for as this draft, approaches in April?
Yeah, I would go with the Ole Miss edge rusher, Princely Umanmillion. That guy could freaking
Florida
play.
Guy. Prince,
Florida guy.
Yeah.
Florida guy. You're right. That guy, he's a technical speed rusher. Again, you see this a lot as a note with defensive linemen coming out, but the guy has to use his hands a little bit better, but he's got all the tools. And I came out with a 2nd-round grade with him when I got done looking at him. And he's almost not being talked about anywhere. But he's going to come in. He's going to test pretty darn well, I think. He's got the size. He's got the measurables. He's got everything that you want, and just needs those little finer points, fine-tuned, and he's going to be a really good player at the next level. Offensively, this is a guy that's really, I haven't seen much of anything about and I'm really shocked, and it's Mitchell Evans, the tight end out of Notre Dame. He put together last year, is in 23, in the 23 season, one of the best games, complete games I've ever seen a player of any position put together. And it came out of nowhere. Now, he had an injury this past year, and he missed several games. But he's a guy that looks like he's an immediate tight end too somewhere. He can block. He's a very good receiver. He's a very capable route runner. And he's kind of one of those under the radar tight ends. I think that I don't know why not a lot of people are talking about him, but he's a guy that absolutely should be mentioned with top tight ends.
Smitty said we haven't talked about Travis Hunter, which, I mean, hey, that just show you how intriguing this draft is. I mean, obviously Travis Hunter is going to play the cornerback position, which I think suits him just fine when you start talking about what a defensive coordinator could do if one side of the field potentially is locked down. But how fast do you think Travis Hunter is going to? Because everybody knows there's nothing Travis Hunter can do that we haven't seen. I mean, he's about as fluid of an athlete as you're going to see. But when he put his hand on the ground, because, you know, certain players like him is, man, let's show off a little bit. Like, people looking for every man, go show him what we got. I'm not even that vertical going to be stupid. I don't even want to know what that's going to be. He's probably going to be around, 6'1", about 180, 85. He's not going to be the biggest guy, slender build. But when he put his hand on the ground, do you see 4.3? Maybe I don't know if he can get to 4.2, but you see like a 4.3 coming from a Travis Hunter.
I see. I put this down. I remember the game. I saw it against North Dakota State. I thought 4.35. That's why I think he's going to run. He's going to run right around there. You see the initial short burst, and you see it when he's in recovery too. But it was that one play. He took a slant, I think is what it was, or it might have been a little drag, and he took that thing all the way around the edge and straight to the house and outran everybody. Now, North Dakota State, very good, fundamentally sound team. Not exactly a bunch of athletes, but he dusted them all. There wasn't anybody who was close to him on that field. I do see a 4.35. I would not be shocked if he hit 4.30 flat. You know, I really wouldn't be shocked at a 4.29 either, but I think 4.35 is my estimate.
Well, let me ask you this then. If, just say Travis Hunter didn't win the Heisman. He still had the same year, didn't win the Heisman. Who was QB? Who was cornerback one? Is it Travis Hunter or is it Will Johnson?
Oh, it's Travis. It's Travis. Absolutely. You know, I think the Will Johnson is going to be an interesting case because they made that injury out at the beginning of the year. He suffered injury like 6 games into the year, missed the rest of the season. They made it sound like initially it was not a big deal. And as the games started piling up that he didn't play, they said, well, you know, it's a little bit more serious. And then it came out, it's serious. I think that's going to be enough to kind of bump him down. But it's also the fact that Hunter, I think, could play both man and zone. I think Johnson's more of a zone corner. He's going to be better in a match 4 system. So I think that Travis has the athletic ability to stay with people in man coverage. And I question that a little bit more with Will Johnson.
Real quickly, because you have 2 NFC South guys on here, John, you obviously didn't play Michael Penix Jr. With the Eagles this year. They played Kirk Cousins. But you did play Bryce Young, and that game was a very good game for the Carolina Panthers in a losing effort. Still, Ben, I still show Ben the play out of the back of the end zone where Bryce somehow avoids Jalen Carter's grasp. I think it was Jalen Carter anyway, and then he completes the pass down to Xavier Legette 45 yards down the floor. What do you think about Bryce Young and Michael Penix Jr. going into 2025? I mean, the NFC South Falcons-Panthers rivalry for the next decade just might be Matt Ryan versus Cam Newton television. If Bryce and Penix play like they did kind of going down the stretch this year. Yeah,
so with Bryce, I liked him a lot when he came out, and there were certain I think he needed to sit for a little bit. I think it was criticized by the media, but I think it was good for him to sit for about a month. It ended up being about a month behind Andy Dalton playing. and let him just kind of see how somebody who's done it for a long time approaches it. Let him kind of watch for a little bit, be that guy in the room that he's not getting chewed out by the coach, in the Monday, Tuesday meetings, but he's still learning, he's watching, he's observing, and I think that helped him a lot. I think it helped his confidence too. But he's an elite improviser. I keep going back to that LSU play when he was at Alabama, where they're in the red zone. It ended up being intercepted, but he's running toward the line of scrimmage like he's about to throw, and all of a sudden he whips out the sidearm and works the ball around the defenders directly in front of him. If the receiver had been paying attention, it was a touchdown. He wasn't. It hits his hands, it jumps up in the air, and is intercepted. But he's got that improv ability where his body control's ridiculous. And he can really kind of create when stuff kind of starts to break out of structure. So the size is going to worry you for a long time, but it looks like something he could potentially overcome. It looks like, Dave Canales is going to end up being a good fit to kind of get him into situations where he's going to be more comfortable. Obviously, we saw him do that with Baker Mayfield the year before in Tampa Bay. Yeah. Penix was a little bit more interesting because one of the guys that I really like to go to with the quarterback position is Luke McCown. He played in the league for a few years. It's Josh's little brother. Luke is a really good guy too, and he keeps up with the quarterbacks really extensively. He does some quarterback coaching down there in Texas, where he's living. He's got a couple sons that we'll probably be watching here on Saturdays in the not too distant future. And the thing with he loved Michael Penix, loved him, said he was the best thrower in the draft, in this past draft. And he's right. He can throw those 20-yard timing routes better than anybody that came out in the last few years, really. And that's his strength. So as long as they can play to his strength and give him some time to let that play kind of develop down the field, yeah, he's going to be a solid player. And I liked a lot of the stuff that I saw from him this year. I wish they'd started playing him a little bit earlier, so that he could get a little bit more experience under his belt.
Yeah, I think
no, Smitty, go ahead and tell John, look, we played in the last game of the year. I was like, and then we was doing predictions. He was like, what if the Panthers beat the Falcons? I said, yeah, we fell off a cliff at one point. We beat Tampa Bay twice. I mean, I want to say Kirk Cousins had 9 touchdown passes. I mean, no picks against Tampa. And then all of a sudden he forgot, I'm Kirk Cousins. He went from somebody. And then I just want to say this. Listen, when Bryce Young throws the touchdown pass to the tight end, and he does he throws it and like spins. It's like he spun and turned. I'm going to make a confession. Smitty asked me, did I see the play in real time? I lied and said, no, I didn't see it. I did see it. Of course I saw it. But I told you no, and then Smitty going to send me the clip. Hold on, I'm going to send it to you right now. No, don't send it to me. I'm sending but I like what you said about Luke McCown. I was blessed enough to have a cup of coffee with the Tampa Bay Bucks. Luke McCown was on the team.
Yep.
And Luke, the one thing about Luke, when I was playing with him, Luke was breaking down the game of football while he's playing. Because John Gruden want to have these photosynthesis type play calls. They're just long for no reason. And Luke Luke had to do the whole. Luke will say, man, we have to sit in the meeting room with him. He'll get a play. We'll give it back to him. He'll say, I said, y'all sitting there? Yeah, man. No playbook. I said, well, I don't play quarterback. I don't love football as much as y'all do. Calling those players. But yeah, Luke and his brother, they both really, really good. I mean, his brother go from not playing football to coaching. Like he's coaching right now and doing a good job at it, by the way, doing a good job at it. But yeah, man, to be able to have people like you say, if Luke watching these quarterbacks, he's probably watching, rotation of the football. Are you staring down receivers? Are you going through your reads? Are you going 1, 2, 3 check down? Are you doing it with your eye? Just all these little intricacies that we don't see from a quarterback. He'll say, yeah, man. So yeah. Shout out to Luke. Listen, shout out to the draft class of 04. Luke McCown, Louisiana Tech youngin. Go from Texas to Louisiana. Yeah. From hot air. So shout out to the McCown boys. Shout out.
Yeah.
Well, John, as we approach here in just over an hour's time, we'll let you go here. Is there anything that you wanted to kind of leave our listeners with? Things, maybe some names that we did not bring up in kind of our analysis, and I know we didn't get through all the position groups intentionally, or anything that you wanted to kind of let them know about with this draft? Maybe some guys on your board to watch going into the draft, maybe for their team in the later rounds. Anything that you wanted to kind of bring up as you head out the door?
Yeah, I would be remiss to not mention it, to get off here without mentioning a couple of guys that I really like. Corner Quincy Riley out of Louisville, one of my favorite guys in this class. He is a dog, and a guy that you could kind of fit him in. He's probably going to end up playing a nickel initially, in the NFL, but is a guy that he could kind of do a little bit of everything, and he's a vicious tackler. I had the opportunity to hang out with him a little bit at the Senior Bowl and pick his brain a little bit, and he's really fun to be around. He's going to be a really good locker room guy. Quincy's one of my favorite dudes in this class. And then there's not many people I like to, bug Jim Nagy, the director of the Senior Bowl, about. Because I know Jim is a super busy guy. The Senior Bowl is, it's the all-star game that most people go to. It's got most of the top players, pretty much all the top players now. But about halfway through the year, I said, Jim, you gotta invite David Walker out of Central Arkansas. I really want to see him down there. That's the one guy I'm going to bug you about this year. And he said, that's funny you mentioned that, because his coach played at the Senior Bowl, Jason Brown, in 2011. And he's been telling me the same thing. And David came down there and absolutely killed it. He was an absolute joy to watch. He's a little bit of an undersized edge rusher, but he's enough of an athlete that he makes up for it. Super productive. Video game numbers at Central Arkansas. In fact, let me pull them up real quick because they're that crazy. 68 tackles last year, 23 for loss, 10.5 sacks, 4 forced fumbles. And he put up that production for 4 years.
No, Smitty, y'all not getting him. Don't be shaking. He's not going to Carolina. I saw that little spurt. Tackles for a loss. Listen, double-digit sacks is the hardest thing to do. I'm gonna keep. It is the hardest thing to do in football. Double-digit sacks, 23.5 tackles for a loss. That sounds like Josh Allen. I'm talking about Josh Allen coming out of Kentucky. Mm-hmm. That's his type numbers. That's what made him a top 5. I think it was like 4th or 5th. In that draft. I'm just saying, tackles for loss shows I live in the backfield and I want problems, meaning I don't want to just be a pass rusher. So, hey, man, shout out to that Central Arkansas putting them numbers like that. And, John, you going to Jim Nagy about players. That's the part that players, not saying that the player going to ask you to do it, but when you go into bat for players and saying, look, just get him here. And then he go, and what was it like when you saw him there? He like, I told you put it. Listen, the kid can play. And sometimes it only comes down to that opportunity. That's why, players that have the biggest, I want to say, to make errors and not play well, it's first-round picks. People expect you to be him. But sometimes, you mentioned Princely. When Princely left to go to Ole Miss, he doesn't – listen, Princely – has brothers. He has a brother named Prince.
Yeah.
Brother named Princeton. They all named Prince, like Prince, Princeton, Prince Lee, Prince Will. You a Prince in that family, and if he had a sister, her name would be Princess. Guaranteed. But keep on going to bat for these players, because the one thing Nagy respects is scouting. And he knows you ain't just telling, like, man, I've seen it. I see the flash players, because as much as we want to talk about these great ones, which we hope the great ones, Myles Garrett is great. He turned out to be phenomenal. Number 1 overall picks have the biggest margin for error. If you ain't taking your team to Super Bowls, like, if you ain't, changing the whole dynamic of your position, people think you're a bust. Well, man, NFL is where the best in the world play. That's where the best of the best play. And sometimes it just don't happen that way. But, hey, man, John, listen, let me tell you something. You're going to be our go-to guy, John. We're going to stalk you now. I'm just telling you right now, only because I respect film study as a person that had to do it. But film study and evaluation is two different things. Film study is great. People do it every week. We doing it in Pop Warner football now. Mm-hmm. Evaluating a player, I don't know if you're in a dark room saying, I don't know if you're married and you're telling your lady, listen, I need 7 hours. What? Because I don't know how long it takes and I don't know what makes you see a player and go, okay, I got all I need. Because you got to see the run game, you got to see the pass game, you got to see third down, you got to see goal line, you got to see short yardage. Then you start saying, okay, he's going to be a special team. It's just a lot that goes into it. But hey, man, I respect it. People say, man, you want to be I don't want to be a coach. I don't want to be a draft analyst. I want to come behind these microphones and these computer screens and talk trash and get up out of there. and people say, well, Ben, what you guys? Listen, I will steal something from John. Like you use the word elite improviser. To me, that I've never heard it like that. I've heard you got to improvise. I've heard elite game managers but now you got to improvise so much, you better be elite at it, especially if that's what you're known for. Like Russell Wilson, when he was in Seattle, he was an elite improviser. He's running around every freaking play. But now that he's older, he can't run around.
Can't run around anymore.
I mean, you got Sierra with about 17 kids now. That's not going to work, Russell. You're going to have to, but yeah, elite improviser is a word I'm going to use because I think with the Bryce Young, he is elite. I don't need him being elite improviser when he playing the Falcons. Do that when you play the Bucks, man, and when you play the Saints. Don't be doing something, man. Looking all good. Man,
yeah.
You got it.
John, where can we find your work? Talk to us about any projects, draft guides, things that you're working on. Where can we find all your stuff?
Yeah, everything is posted on my X, on Twitter. That's the best place to get it, at Draft Vogel. That's really it. Podcast links will go there. Anything that we do on that side. The draft guide is posted at least once a week, usually twice. The access to it, you can go ahead and I got a breakdown pinned on there to show, the different stuff that's in there so that you kind of have an idea what you're getting. I do have something in the works. I haven't signed the contract yet. I can't talk about it. So that's the hard part when we're in these things. Yeah. But, I do some work on the agent side as well. So, that's just scouting for guys and telling them, hey, here's a dude that you want to take a look at. This dude's worth your time. It's just, I love the game and I'm going to comment a lot about it. Different, players, film study. I'm going to do a lot of different things with it.
I have one last question. I'll kind of put your brain to the test. I didn't ask this to any of other draft analysts. I'll ask this to you. When it's all said and done, draft is over for 2025. What are we going to be saying was the story of this draft in the first round? Last year, I think people talked about Ben's team, Michael Penix going to Atlanta after signing Kirk Cousins. So what are we going to talk about with this 2025 draft? Is it a team? Is it a player? What's the storyline going to be coming out of the 2025 draft?
I think it's going to be, man, have you ever seen that many trades in the first round? I think there's a lot of people they want to move right now. They don't like where they're sitting. There's going to be some desperation. There's going to be some players. There's going to be some picks moving. There's going to be some assets moving that's going to kind of blow your mind a little bit. Like, did not see that coming. A lot like I think it's going to be a lot like I think it was 2022 where AJ Brown got moved to the Eagles in the first round.
Don't
bring that up. Ben has nightmares over AJ Brown getting moved to the Titans.
Bro, what are you talking? He wants $20 million. $20 million for an elite receiver now is a bargain.
Oh, that wasn't Mike Vrabel. I can tell you that right now. That was not him. That was not his decision.
Hold on. Wait a minute. Now you said the trades. What big name free agent? Well, here in the free. Well, what big name is going to get dealt in this draft? It don't got to be a quarterback. We know about Myles Garrett. Is there going to be a big name who nobody? And we go, what? Because I remember when AJ Brown got traded to the Eagles. I'm like, why would you? I mean, I'm just saying they had Traylon Burks. What? Come on.
Yeah. I think desperation drives people to do desperate things. And right now, we've got 6 or 7 teams that are at absolute desperation. And I think that's going to create absolute chaos.
I'm gonna tell you what I think will be chaotic. It's not gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. You're talking about quarterbacks and young quarterbacks. The New England Patriots drafted 2. I believe Joe Milton at the right spot could be dangerous. Do you think he becomes a part of a package to get, somebody to move? Because he could throw a football through a freaking brick wall if you asked him to. Does Joe Milton find himself in a new geographic location on another team because maybe they, because quarterbacks are obviously the easiest thing to get assets for?
You talking about overthrow Joe?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
I'm sorry. Live in Tennessee. Watched him in Tennessee. That's what we called him down here. Overthrow Joe. No, I thought he had a really good game. I think the quarterback that's probably more likely to move is probably Hendon Hooker at Detroit.
That's a good one.
That's probably the better chance because he's been there a couple of years. He's come back from the I think it was the ACL injury. That'd be one that I think would move before Joe Milton would.
I got so sick of him in Tennessee.
Not Tanner McKee from Philly.
Well, see, we went back to quarterbacks having to move, right? And if you really can't move, it's really hard for you to kind of fit in this league now. And that's kind of where McKee's at. McKee's a statue. Like, yeah, don't get me wrong. He's played well with Philadelphia. I think every time he goes out there, he throws a touchdown. It feels like, but he's a little bit of a statue back there. He really can't move.
I know being our Florida guys, and I know we're kind of up against it here as we move into the headlines to close up the show. But 2 Tennessee guys we did not discuss that I do like. I'll just say it is James Pierce at the edge, and then Dylan Sampson at the running back position.
Pierce is nasty. Pierce is nasty good. Nasty good. Makes me sicky that good.
Elite bend, really good athlete. Gets around the edge and makes a lot of tackles, but he's kind of, I think that there are some actual legitimate concerns. I've seen the character stuff kind of come up. I think there's some actual concerns about how much he wants to play. I think that is that is a legitimate concern. And so that kind of worries you a little bit with players. We talked about a couple of quarterbacks all early on in this episode that look at their brand and look at their image more. That matters across every position, and that worries me a little bit about James. But Dylan Sampson, one of my favorite running backs in this class. He's a smaller guy, but he runs between the tackles, contact balance for days. Give me Dylan Sampson in the second round, and I'll try to get you a Super Bowl.
Well, John, you're happy to stick around for our last segment here going out the door. We're just going to go through the transactions and storylines around the league as we head out the door here, as we do pretty much every week. So I'll go and start, Ben. We now know the NFL team is the Green Bay Packers. They are proposing to ban the tush push.
Listen, number one, who are they? What do you mean they want to ban the tush push or the brotherly shove? No. Here's the thing. Take everybody you got in the stadium and try to stop it. It's the greatest play. This is what Green Bay is really saying. We can't do it. We didn't invent it, so they get rid of it. I feel the same way about wait a minute. Yeah, I feel the same way about the politician guy in Ohio State that's trying to ban getting the opposing team's flag, playing on your field. Just beat them. No, just beat them. Yeah, I'm from Ohio. We're supposed to be, really trying to, help people. I'm here to get legislation. We lost to Michigan and they planted their flag. Sir, are you serious? Yeah. And I want them to go to jail. Like, no. Green Bay is very, very relevant. They're always going to be, cheeseheads, what may have you. No, Jordan Love won't no part of this. Come on, man. No. Now, if Pittsburgh was saying this, or if Washington was saying this, or Dallas was saying this, it will still be laughable. But no. Roger Goodell got enough stuff to do than to be trying to get the tush push. Because guess what? They're gonna do it. What are you gonna do? Like, how do you stop that? Flag on the play before they snap the ball? They was doing the tush push. Man, Jason Kelsey and them boys, he ain't even there no more. Man, stop it. No. lame. I give it a lame.com. No, it's football. You can't ban stuff that's legal. Come on, man. Stop it.
It's funny that the Packers are the ones that are putting it up because I think it was the Packers this year that had issues even running a quarterback sneak. So I think you hit it, Ben.
I'm just saying. I mean, we got a lot. It's a lot of things we should be. The kickoff, we can't even run down the field no more. They have to stand like 10 yards from each other and just right. Roger Goodell,
yeah,
try me with the nonsense, man. Get out of here with that.
We talked about Stafford earlier, so I won't mention him again. 2 veterans who will not be re-signed are going to be released. My Panthers not re-signing veteran Shaq Thompson, one of 2 players left from our Super Bowl 2015 team. And then the Browns released starting safety Juan Thornhill, former Kansas City Chief safety, who spent his first 4 years in Kansas City, winning 2 Super Bowls in Kansas City.
If both gentlemen decide they want to keep playing football, I mean, it's they're going to be they can decide to come under that cap, or they can be cap casualties. I mean, the older you get in this league, the only thing that gets value as you get older is quarterback play, whether you're a starter or a backup, because you can't have enough good quarterbacks. Shaq, really, really good player. Thornhill, a productive player, but if they'll cut you if you win Super Bowls, they'll definitely cut you if you're not. It just comes with the game.
2 more for you. We'll start with the Dallas Cowboys. Last year, it was Jerry says we are all in. We're all in this year, boys. This year, the Cowboys are going to be selectively aggressive in free agency, says Jerry Jones.
Do you really think people are going to take Jerry Jones serious when you hire Brian Schottenheimer as your head coach? Like, just come on. And this is nothing against Brian. You hired a coach that was on nobody's radar. People said, Brian Schottenheimer, Marty's son. Look, listen. Jerry Jones, okay, if you look up the word narcissist, right, he's above it. He like, dude, like narcissist. I don't get it. You own the Dallas Cowboys and you do more interviews than Michael Parsons doing podcasts at this point. He's Jerry Jones, right? He's an attention-seeking. He can't help himself. Could you imagine if they really won a Super Bowl? It's not going to happen. We don't got to worry about that.
I mean, there's a third NFC East team that I didn't talk about. Speaking of Micah Parsons, Lawrence Taylor, formerly of the New York Giants, came out this week and said Micah Parsons needs to, do less podcasting and more leadership with Dallas.
I mean, is anybody going to say something to Lawrence Taylor? No.
Nope.
I mean, I'm saying no. I'm saying. It's Lawrence Taylor. He can say Lawrence Taylor is the reason why the left tackles get paid what they get paid. Lawrence Taylor invented a position called outside linebacker. Lawrence Taylor won. Listen to me, people. He won MVP of the league, not defensive MVP. He won MVP. You notice that Lawrence Taylor used to wear a little cross on his ear, little cross earring. What do Saquon Barkley wear? I'm just saying. I love Michael Parsons. And I'm never going to question his podcasting ability. We podcasters ourselves. But Michael middle name might be, Jerry, because he got that Jerry Jones and that outlandish stuff he says. Like Michael Parsons say some stuff that go, dude, are you doing sensationalized media? I love Michael. Michael is him. But Michael Parsons got to realize, dude, people listen to what you say. Like you can't just come on here and say, I think we're a player away. No, you're not. No. I would say that if Michael Parsons played for like the Seattle Seahawks, he wouldn't be as popular, even with the same stats. But if you don't think Dallas helped him become, are we really? Think about it. Zeke played for Dallas last year. Do you remember? Me neither. Ezekiel Elliott played for Dallas last year. Now he ain't showing off. He ain't got the abs no more. He ain't got the cut off shirts no more. He ain't not that Zeke. His name is Ezekiel now. I don't know what. Look, it's the Cowboys, man.
Yeah.
We talk about the Cowboys because it's funny, not because we have to. It's just funny. Yeah.
And then finally, some combine news, which John's still on with us. Abdul Carter will not work out at the combine, and then Shedeur Sanders said he will not throw, and Cam Ward also potentially will not throw either. John, you might be able to weigh in on these if you have any more information on that.
And I just thought you said about Shedeur sitting. I didn't know that Cam was going to sit. Now, this Cam Shedeur rivalry, you see the stuff they be doing, like hanging out with each other, talking to. I love the back and forth, right? I love the back and forth, but sometimes, I love Shedeur Sanders, but Shedeur Sanders is Hollywood now. The stuff he says, I only drink Gatorade because they pay me for it. And Cam, I love you, Cam. Please don't talk about quitting.
Hold on, John. Before you answer this, I know we are going ridiculously long. John, congratulations! You are on the longest episode of winning the division this year. So
can't tell you how many times I've heard that said. Every time I go on a podcast,
John is him.
Would we be talking about Shedeur this much if his last name wasn't Sanders?
I think there's the talent is there. I think that it's a little overblown. I agree, Ben. The talking is the competitiveness, working out together with each other is fun to see, but you got to tone down the rhetoric a little bit.
Yes.
Okay. When you got one sitting there saying I'm generational, and you got the other coming back with, and I'm legendary. Guys, you guys are quarterbacks 7 and 8 last year. Like, shut up, please. Like, go get better. It's really hard. They're getting blown up in this draft because they are the 2 top quarterbacks in this class. But compared to recent memory, they are not nearly as strong as prospects. I really think that all 6 last year picked in the first round were better prospects than they are. I wouldn't go as far to say Spencer Rattler was, but if they're in last year's draft, they're going 3rd, 4th round, and the need for quarterback. There's 6, 7 teams right now in the league that they don't have that question answered right now. Who's going to play quarterback this year? That's going to push them up the board. I don't think it's smart to just sit and play this game where we're not going to throw at the combine, come to our pro day. They're going to be at your pro day anyways, so I don't see why you don't throw now. I'm an old school guy like that. I want to see competitiveness. I remember this from Will Levis too, not at the combine, but his last game at Kentucky. Hey, you got a chance to go out there and solidify yourself as a 1st round pick. I was there at the Music City Bowl, live in Nashville, try to hit that game every year. And saw Will on the sideline and asked him, I said, hey, you gonna throw at the Senior Bowl? You're gonna go to the Senior Bowl? You got that invite? We're kind of talking to people around the league and seeing if that's something we really need to do. And it's like, no, dude, you need to go do that. Put yourself out there, go do the interviews, start that process, get familiar with it, show them everybody you want to be there. And guess what happened? He fell out of the 1st round, because he showed arrogance at times. And so I think arrogance is the worst thing at the quarterback position. Both of those guys have a lot of it. And that concerns me a lot as an evaluator.
Well, I will end this podcast here talking about the quarterback, which we have talked about all night. Gentlemen, I will leave you with this question. In your mind, and Ben, we cannot pick our respective teams in this equation. Jalen Hurts has won the Super Bowl, so he is not in this question, obviously. He's a reigning Super Bowl champion at this point. What is your quarterback with the most to prove going into 2025? I will start with mine, Kyler Murray of the Arizona Cardinals. He has a lot to prove this year. He's finally healthy again. He was healthy last year. One playoff appearance so far in his time in Arizona, and it was a dud, as we know, to the LA Rams. Kyler Murray's got a lot to prove this year, not just in Arizona, but his future in the NFL, in my opinion. That is my quarterback with the most to prove in 2025.
Most to prove in 2025 for me, to me, I think it's easy. I think the most to prove in 2025 is Lamar Jackson. For the simple fact that Lamar Jackson has shown everything. Lamar Jackson should have been the if you're not going to give the MVP to Lamar Jackson, give it to Saquon Barkley because Josh Allen was not the MVP. You know how you know the MVP is biased? 2 years ago when Lamar Jackson won, he had 49 to 50 votes. You know who the one vote came from? The guy came from Buffalo. Voted for Josh Allen 2 years ago. So for me, it is Lamar Jackson because I think Lamar Jackson don't care about MVP awards no more. He's done it twice. He went 41 touchdowns and 4 picks. What? So for me, It's Lamar Jackson because I think Jalen Hurts has shown everybody. Do you care about awards or do you care about rings? Because I don't, and I think that's the thing about the narrative. We get so caught up in box scores and numbers and MVPs. Well, Josh Allen has never been to a Super Bowl. Lamar Jackson's never been to an AFC Championship game. Jalen Hurts has been to 2-1-2 and only won one Super Bowl. So what is elite? Elite is the one standing at the end. I know Nick Foles did it, but he did it in a Robin role because of Jalen Hurts, Ron Jaworski, Randall Cunningham. You talk about Michael Vick. You talk about Donovan McNabb. All those guys, Barkley that came from USC. All those guys get to say, "Hey, Jalen, how you do that? Come take a seat. Show you guys how to start the season, end the season, even though I got hurt. Because to come back from what he did or didn't do in 2023 to do what he did in 2024, that is Rocky movie type stuff. That's because he's been to 2-1-1, outplayed Patrick Mahomes boy twice. This time he left no doubt. I think it is Lamar Jackson because pretty soon we're going to get used to seeing elite quarterback play, no post. It's what you do in the postseason, man. So for me, it is Lamar Jackson.
I'll go, before I give my guy, I'll tell you it's interesting about Jalen because there's 2 quarterbacks now in NFL history that have scored 30 or more points in 2 different Super Bowl games. It's Joe Montana and it's Jalen Hurts. That's it. That's mind-blowing. Tom Brady was in 7 Super Bowls and did not score over 30 points 2 times. Won 7 Super Bowls, excuse me. Was in 10. My guy, I think I'm going to go with this Jordan Love with the Packers. He's got a young group of receivers that he's been growing up with. They've all been playing together for a long time, developing together. And you need to take that final step, play consistently, and take that team and go win the division. And I think he's got the most to prove. He was very inconsistent, very streaky all year with his accuracy. I know he dealt with some injuries at a couple different times. That field in Brazil kind of messed him up in the first game. And then I think he was against Carolina this year. Was that where the game where he kind of got hurt again, yes, injured his groin?
Yes.
Not. I don't think we played the Packers this year.
It was somebody. They were all. I forget who it was.
It's right. Wait a minute. It was right before the Tennessee game. Whoever they played right before Tennessee, because Malik Willis had to play against Tennessee.
That's right.
Beat us. God. Anyway. Woo.
That's right. So, I think he's got the most to prove. You know, you gave him the contract. He's got 3 more years on it. I think maybe 4, and you got to show now you're the guy. And that you're going to take this team and go in the division and be competitive.
Yeah, those are all good answers.
Joe Burrow is my number 2, especially when they get T. Higgins and Jamar Chase back. He is my number 2 because
I was debating.
Yeah, Joe Burrow.
I think we can all agree on that. Yeah, Joe Burrow was our number 2.
Dyes hair back normal colors. We go back to normal color hair, Joe, not Macaulay Culkin blonde, and we'll see what happens. But Joe Cool is nice now. The man is. When he got us talk about Cincinnati as a contender, that's a hell of a quarterback. Come on, man.
Well, Joe Cool is Joe Burrow, and that's where we end winning the division, episode number 28. Our guest today, again, has been John Vogel. We'll find him on the Twitter machine X at Draft Vogel, where you can find him on the Sick Podcast Network at Draft Vogel. And for Ben Troupe, I am Ryan Smith. This is Winning the Division, episode number 28. Rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcast. Find us on the Keep Pounding Podcast Network, the Fans First Sports Network, at Tobacco Sports Radio on YouTube. And leave us your questions, leave us your comments, and let us know how you think. We love doing these podcasts for you, bringing over guys like John, Draft Analyst, and just guys in between. And just enjoy kind of giving you guys content once a week. Because again, as Ben likes to say, I'll leave you with this. You're either winning your division, which the Philadelphia Eagles did this year, and they won the whole Super Bowl, or you're just in the division, and that would be like your Cleveland Browns. So for Ben Troupe, I am Ryan Smith, and for our guest, John Vogel, this is Winning the Division, episode number 28. We will see you next time.